Hello and welcome to Enlightened Empaths, your community for the spiritually awakened, where we discuss, explore, and connect with fellow empaths, healers, intuitives, and seekers. Hello, empaths. We are thrilled to welcome back our friend George Lizos, who's a spiritual teacher, psychic healer, Greek pagan priest, creator of Intuition Mastery School, as well as the best-selling author of books such as Be the Guru, Lightworkers Gotta Work, and Protect Your Light. He also hosts two fabulous podcasts, The Lit Up Lightworker and Can't Host. George has been named one of the top 50 health and wellness influencers, and his work has been featured in Goop, PopSugar, and MindBodyGreen. He's on Enlightened Empaths today to talk about his newest book, Secrets of Greek Mysticism, which is the first spiritual book about the Greek gods and goddesses written by a native practicing priest of Hellenic Polytheism. In Secrets of Greek Mysticism, George reintroduces the gods and goddesses from a theological rather than a mythological perspective, and he helps teach readers how to find each god or goddess within them. Welcome to the show, George. We're so happy to have you back on.
Hi, Samantha, and hi, Denise. Thank you so much for having me.
We're so happy you're here.
No, we are so happy to have you here. I really like this book because you do talk about these people, these gods and goddesses, as though they are people and not these fictional mythological characters. And I'd like for you to talk about that, especially for our Christian listeners who always associate this with myths.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking this question, because that was the reason I decided to write this book. Every time I would tell people that I am a priest to Hellenic Polytheism, they would just look at me with a puzzled face, what do you mean? Are they just myths? But the truth is, it's not. It's just when the old religion shifted to Christianity back in the beginning of the later antiquity. That's when there was Christian propaganda around shifting people's perception away from the old religion and into the new religion. But in truth, the biggest misconception about the Greek gods and goddesses is that they're these lifeless idols that are just stories and myths. In truth, they are universal laws and functions. So when we think about the law of gravity, that is a universal law that's represented by a god, for example. Let's say, for example, Aphrodite, she's the embodiment of the law of form. And therefore she creates, she's in the creation of every single piece of consciousness in the universe. When you think about bees pollinating flowers, when you think about the waves crashing on the ocean and creating new kind of energy and form and land, when you think of volcanoes erupting and creating new earth, when you think of people having sex, that new creation, that is Aphrodite's energy. So the Greek gods and goddesses are real. They are gods in the sense that they are multiplications of the universe. They're different embodiments of universal laws and functions in the same way that all the laws that we know of physics are. And they also exist outside of the Greek pantheon and the way we've defined them, in the sense that every single pagan culture around the world had interpreted those different kind of energies with different names. So when you go to the Norse pagan tradition, when you go to the Celtic one, when you go to the Egyptian one, all the gods, they are people's own interpretation of those same energies. That's why we find similarities, for example, with, let's say, for example, goddess Ishtar in Mesopotamia with Aphrodite, or with the Egyptian god Ra with the Greek god Apollo, because it's the same kind of laws interpreted by different cultures around the world.
So you don't see them as archetypes, you see them as beings.
They're not just archetypes, and they're not beings. They are the universe. The way that best explains it is something that my teacher always used to tell me. We don't need to search outside of ourselves to connect with the gods, to find the gods, because we're already swimming in the ocean of the gods. So if you think about it, everything you see around you are the gods. So that's why in the book, when I talk about the gods, I don't just introduce them from their myths, because I do talk about their creation myth, because the myths are allegories. They have important messages to understanding the essence of the gods. But I talk about the virtues of the gods, because the ancient Greeks, the whole point of ancient Greek religion was all about living a virtuous life. And each god represents different virtues that we can use to embody, such as the virtue of bravery or courage or fortitude or quickness of mind. But what I do in the book, in the mantra that I have for each god, the mantra usually starts with an I or I am. And then in the meditation, I ask people to bring the energy of the god within them by saying, I am Apollo or I am Aphrodite, because I want to dissolve this boundary between us and the other, us and the gods. This is the Christian perspective of seeing the world, in the sense that the God is outside of us, and therefore we have to pray to the gods. That's not how the ancient Greeks saw this and perceived things. Instead of praying to the gods with humility because they feared the gods, what they did was extend their hands up to the gods and welcome the gods in, appreciated the gods. That's why our prayers are appreciative prayers. Thank you for, rather than God, please.
What it feels like you're describing is if you're working as a medium or as an intuitive, you're raising your auric field to blend with spirit. And my question is there, we all know that you can go to different levels, different realms. You can connect with ancestors or ascended masters or the angelic realm. Would there be a realm with these gods that you could channel or bring yourself to and meet them?
Yes, that's a great question. And I love that you brought mediumship into this, because what I wanted to do with this book was bridge the New Age world with the pagan world. Because I go to like pagan witchy podcasts and they're like, oh, this book like feels a little bit New Agey, but it's also pagan, that they can't really categorize it. And then I go to like New Agey kind of podcasts and they're like, oh, it feels a little bit pagan, but there's like New Agey stuff. Like, so how do you, because I walk both of these paths. I grew up Christian. I went into witchcraft, then I went into New Ageism, and now I'm like a pagan, but I'm also like a New Ager as well. So I've learned to bridge it all together. So here's how I've explained that in the book. In the book, I talk about the 3 planes of existence: the physical plane, the mental plane, and the spiritual plane. This is according to the ancient Greeks and also like the Hermetics. And then I introduce the 4th plane, the Olympian plane. And now, in the same way that we have an aura, the earth also has an aura. And the different layers of the aura are different dimensions. And in the different dimensions live different beings. So we have the physical plane that represent us, people, and also the animal world and the plant world, and the elementals, and therefore we can communicate with the beings in that plane. Then we have the mental plane, where we can communicate with angels, we can communicate with like higher beings. And then we have the spiritual plane, which is where like low-level deities live, ascended masters, low-level deities within the Greek pantheon as well. And then we reach the Olympian layer, the Olympian plane of existence, where the Greek gods and goddesses live. Now, they don't live in the sense that it's a fixed state and they live within that. They exist everywhere. It's just a way of us compartmentalizing this. What's important to understand about the ancient Greek gods and goddesses and pagan gods, period, is that they're not confined within a physical space. They're not confined by time and space. They're pure, they're loving, they're unchanging, and they're ever present. And therefore, you can find them everywhere. So to answer your question very directly, yes, you can raise your vibration to the Olympian plane of existence and communicate with those beings directly, or you can communicate with different like vibrational frequencies depending on which plane of existence you want to vibrate at. And in the book, I have meditations to going to those planes, specifically to going to the spiritual plane of existence. You would work with Artemis, because she's the gods, they have a purpose around helping humans live physical life and live physical life in a comfortable way, but they also have a purpose around helping human souls, guiding them on their ascension journey. And Artemis exists in that spiritual plane, dealing with souls after they've died, guiding them to evolving their souls. And then we have the intermediary state where we have Poseidon, who's the god of change and transformation, not just the god of the sea and the ocean. He's a god of change and transformation, guiding souls through that transitioning phase. So we approach the gods from both a soul perspective and a very 3D physical perspective.
See, I'm a big believer that it's where we're part of it. We're just a little speck in the whole big thing. And the way you described it, that fits beautifully. So thank you.
I just want to backtrack a little to how you wrote this book because you called up your friend and said, I want to go temple hopping. Like most people go, I think you said most people go bar hopping and you wanted to go temple hopping. Can you just tell us about that and what that experience was like for you guys?
Gosh, that was so fascinating. Like, I love my best friend. He's like from the Czech Republic, and he's just like so easygoing. So it was like the beginning of COVID. And I'm like, Sargis, how do you feel about going on a temple hopping trip? And he's the kind of person who just says yes, even though like if something feels good, he's gonna go for it. And he's like, yeah, let's do it. I'm like, and I made a list of like all the different temples that I wanted to explore in like mainland Greece. And we plan a 15-day trip to go all around and explore them. Because I live in Cyprus, I live on an island. And therefore, we have access to a few temples, particularly Aphrodite and Adonis and Apollo, because according to the, according to the ancient Greek myth, Aphrodite was born here in Cyprus. And therefore, in the ancient times, the biggest cult of Aphrodite was here. But I didn't have access to all the other temples. And of course, you don't need to go to a physical temple to connect with a god. You can connect with them everywhere because they are everywhere. But I thought it would be fun to go and just explore and make a trip out of it. So we started from Athens and we explored all the temples in like the Parthenon, in the Acropolis. Then we went all the way to Sunion to connect with Poseidon. We went to Delphi to connect with Apollo. We went to Olympia. We went to Epidaurus. We went to so many different, like more than 15 temples. And when we reached Olympia, and I have this story in the book, which is that where the Olympic Games started and where Zeus was honored, that was the first day that COVID hit Greece. And it was the first day of lockdown. So we couldn't get in. They closed it down that day. And I have a whole story as to how Zeus decided to get in touch with me, even though I couldn't get to the temple.
Can you tell it briefly?
Yeah. So we were leaving from Olympia feeling very disappointed because we didn't get to meditate with Zeus, and I really wanted to connect with Zeus. So we were following Google Maps directions to go back to like the mainland, like South Greece. And Google was taking us through the fastest path, which meant going through like a mountain range, like through teeny tiny roads, little like villages, not a road you would like go on a road trip on. And the previous days it had been raining. So we ended up getting stuck in a teeny tiny road at the top of the mountains. And there was like a big puddle and muddy puddle of water right in front of us. And I knew if we were to go through, we would just like get completely stuck. And I'm like, let's just backtrack because Sargis was driving. Let's backtrack. He's like, no, I can do it. So he presses on the gas. We go through it. The car slips and turns, and we almost fell down the mountain. We almost died. So we both screamed like, ah, and the car like stopped. So we panicked for a while. Then we got out of the car, removed some rocks, created space, and we turned around. And in that moment, while we were turning, I closed my eyes and I'm like, Zeus, please help us. Please support us. Please help us get out of these alive. Or rather, in that moment, I was asking, I should have said, thank you for, but I was like panicking. So while we were getting out, as soon as we hit the like asphalt, like a main road, I was never happier to see asphalt in my life. An eagle flies right past our window shield and sits on the tree right across us. Now, for those listeners who don't know, eagle is Zeus's sacred animal. And in that moment, even though I hadn't visited Olympia to meet Zeus, I had known him.
And I think that exemplifies beautifully what you were talking about, that you're connecting your paganism with the New Age, with this polytheism, it's all coming together, and not in a new way, but more. I mean, my whole thing right now, I think for all of us, we're trying to come together in unity, and that's what you're offering folks with this new work, is that you could be in Brazil or Ireland or Western Maine or wherever you're going to be and still tap into this energy. And the fact that, I mean, eagle is so, so powerful to get as a sign, and to have it right in front of your car, that's phenomenal.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in there being many different maps to source. And it's not just one. I don't like dogma. And in all my work, I've tried to move away from it. And even though now I belong to like this religion and I'm a priest, it's not a dogmatic religion. What's really important, that's a really important point to make here. Pagan religions were never dogmatic. They would never try to convert people, to get people to believe in their own ways. They practiced syncretism, which is basically the blending of beliefs. So new people would come in, they would bring their own gods, and they would welcome them. Let's bring them in, rather than, okay, this is like a wrong way, you need to come to our way. And that has always been my approach. Even with Christianity, which is like very opposite to like paganism, I find truth in the sacred teachings. And I've studied many different religions and I find truth in all of them. It's just a matter of what map do you want to follow?
Because they're all saying the same thing if you really pay attention. The
The
basic
essence is the
tenets of,
same. Yeah,
they're all saying the same thing. And I love that you're bringing up, you can bring your beliefs and because that's empowering for people. It's empowering, and it also validates who they are and what their lineage is and what their belief system. And that's a huge, huge part to being able to see each other for who we really are. Of course, we're different. That's part of the fun, but we're all human beings. So
exactly.
huge. I love, love, love this conversation. Thank you.
Well, and you always bring it back to the reader. So you talk about how we can be more brave with, the help of Aries, or call in more love with the help of Aphrodite. Can you give some examples of how people, like, let's say someone is feeling a little unsure or hesitant or scared to make a big shift in their life? How could they call on Aries to bring that bravery into their energy?
I'm so glad you brought up Aries, because he's the most misunderstood god. Whenever I tell people I work with the Greek gods, they're like, "Oh, how can you work with like gods who, like, they're gods of war and they fight and they kill?" I'm like, "Well, that's mythology. It's very different from theology." So Ares is not the god of war. He's the god of war in the context of ancient Greece. He's really the god of brutal force. He's the god of bravery. He's a god of courage. What I've learned from Aries is that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is fight. Because what happens when you're being attacked by someone? You're out on the street and someone attacks you, or when you see someone getting bullied. Are you going to send them love and light? No. You're going to fight back. You're going to protect yourself. So sometimes the most loving thing you can do to yourself and for others is fight. So Aries is the combative energy that's necessary when all other options have been exhausted. That's why the affirmation that I chose for Aries is, I stand up for myself and others. And his virtues are bravery and courage. They're different because courage is more in the moment, or the other way around. Bravery is more in the moment and the courage is like more general, like following your life purpose. So how do you bring on the energy? The easiest way to go about it is by repeating that mantra, I stand up for myself and others, or by saying, I am Aries, because that activates the frequency of Aries within you so that you can find the courage to stand up for what you believe in. So there are many ways to work with the gods and goddesses. Some are instant, and in the appendix of the book, I have guidance about receiving signs from the gods by asking for a specific sign, or by trusting your intuition and using automatic writing to like receiving guidance, to more complex ways, but not complicated, by setting up altars and creating this portal of communication between us and the gods. All cultures around the world have built altars as a way of creating these bridges of communication between the profane and the sacred. And it's a simple thing. It's like a corner of your desk, anywhere in your house, where you can set up something that symbolizes that connection with the gods and start having a relationship with them. So you can go from that to receiving a sign, to saying, I am Aries, to saying, I stand up for myself and others, and bringing that energy in there as well. But also, What I've done in the book is I have a section for each god, how to find the god out in nature. Because let's not forget, these are earth-based, it's an earth-based religion. The gods are meant to be experienced out in nature because that's where they're found. They're natural gods. They are universal frequencies and laws and functions.
Do you find that you might have segments of your life where you align more with more of one particular god or goddess? So when you were talking about Aries, that was always the rule with my sons, that the only time, if you always have a right to protect yourself and your family or people that you love and care about. And it's not provoking violence. It's more about that strength. It's empowering. You have to stand up for yourself or someone that, anyway, you already covered that. So I'm thinking about when people are in a really dark spot, they could align with this specific. Will other gods or goddesses ever like come in with that, even though you're not directly aligning with them?
Yes. And this is why the Greek Wheel of the Year, which is similar to the Celtic one, but also a little bit different. The Celtic Wheel of the Year that most people are familiar with, it has like eight festivals, 8 celebrations around the sun. The Greek Wheel of the Year, first of all, each Greek city-state had a different wheel of their year. But what the Greek polytheists have done, they've created a common one that we can all follow. It has 12 festivals all around the earth. So every month we have a different festival and a different god of the month. And the reason they've done that is so that we can honor all the gods and we can have a relationship with all of these frequencies rather than compartmentalizing. Something I don't love about the New Age community is that there is this big focus on goddesses. Goddesses here, goddesses there. I love the goddesses. And it's really important to like give more attention to the divine feminine because it has been suppressed for so long. But let's not forget where those goddesses came from. They came from earth-based traditions that honored both the masculine and the feminine. They didn't compartmentalize. I believe that for the divine feminine to rise, the divine masculine has to rise as well. So when I went to train, I expected a bunch of like goddess talk. And what I got was no, in the altar, we have both a male god and a female goddess. By the way, the gods are genderless. They don't really have a gender. So when I'm talking about masculine and feminine, I talk about the energy, which is non-binary, but it has different characteristics that we've assigned those labels. So just to like include everybody. I've also included in the book like intersex gods, like Aphrodite, the male version of Aphrodite, or Dione, who is the female version of Zeus. There are hermaphrodite gods. Hermaphroditus is an offspring of Hermes and Aphrodite, and it has both a phallus and a vagina. So it's both. Sorry, remind me, let's go back to your question because there's something where I want to finish. Remind me because I just lost track. I went on a tangent.
No, it was a lovely tangent though. It was very engaging. Is if I was, say, trying to connect with a certain god or goddess, and thank you very much for bringing that up about needing the balance for the feminine and the masculine divine, because the pendulum will go, we have to come back to center. And then I was wondering, will any of the, I'm just going to use it this way, will they ever just pop in and say, well, I think you need my energy too?
Yes. So aside from celebrating the gods, like all throughout the year, every month, like celebrating and connecting with a different god or goddess, embracing their virtues, we also have our guardian god or goddess. Now, our guardian god or goddess, and by the way, I have a meditation in the book all about like meeting that. They come with us either throughout this life or they accompany us throughout our soul's journey of ascension. So they follow us throughout many lifetimes because they bring qualities that we need to follow to fulfill our purpose. I feel that my guardian god is Apollo, and therefore Apollo has been guiding me through many lifetimes and is guiding me in this lifetime as well. However, at some point in my life, I needed Aphrodite's energy more when I was going through like healing my sexual trauma, learning to embrace and accept myself and accept my body and my sexuality. I worked a lot with Aphrodite. And I believe my soul chose to incarnate here in Cyprus, where Aphrodite had her biggest cult. And there is strong like feminine energy here for this reason, to heal that part of me. So yes, different gods can come in at different stages of our lives when we need them to learn different things from them. But we have this main god or goddess guardian that follows us throughout our life. And they may not just be one of the 12 Olympians. There are thousands, if not millions, of gods, as many as there are universal functions. So there may be a different type of god, a secondary god, or like so many different types of like deities that we find out in nature as well. Like, for example, naiads, who are the spirits of water, for example, or nymphs. They're still goddesses, or the muses. They may be secondary gods, but they're still universal functions that we can work on, and they can guide us in our lives as well.
One thing that's so great about the book is you change a lot of preconceived notions we have. And I'd love for you to talk about your views on Hera, because I feel that through mythology, not theology, at least me personally, I've always sympathized with her because she's got this, husband who, let's just say, cannot be monogamous. But the way she goes about her anger is fascinating. And, I mean, she's jealous, and she's always like turning people into stuff and doing that. And I just have found her stories endlessly intriguing. But in your book, you give a totally different view of her. So can you share that?
Completely different. She was the one that surprised me as well, because when I was a kid, I was really into Xena the Warrior Princess and Hercules: The Legendary Journeys. I love those two series. Okay, they were so inaccurate, but so entertaining. At some point, Gabrielle had to like recite a hymn in Greek, and they basically took random words in Greek and they put them together, and like it's so embarrassing listening back to it. I'm like, why couldn't you just take a poem? And anyway, I'm gonna come back to Hera.
Pull from Homer, something.
Exactly, pull something. Anyway, so the way Hera was represented in Xena Warrior Princess and Hercules, like menacing eyes in the sky and a peacock feather and like menacing music, and she was always like coming in to like take revenge again against Hercules or against Xena. So she was portrayed as the bad girl of the whole series, as a villain. And she's portrayed as the villain elsewhere, like as well. But in truth, her protectiveness has to do with her fearless speech, with her pride, with her magnanimity. These are her virtues. She's all about standing up for who you are, like fierce, feminine vibes, like boss babe kind of vibes. Not being afraid to share her truth, which is an important quality of the divine feminine. In truth, Hera, she's the womb of creation. Zeus is the representation of the divine feminine, holding the totality of all masculine gods. And Hera sees the embodiment of the divine feminine energy, holding the totality of all female goddesses. And that's why in January, we celebrate the Theogamia, the sacred wedding between Hera and Zeus, the blend of the divine masculine and the divine feminine, which is at the core of every single creation in the world, including ourselves. We have masculine energy, feminine energy coming together, and boom, we have creation. Hence, Zeus is the semen of the universe, a universal semen, while Hera is a womb that gets impregnated by that semen, creating life on earth, creating every single desire we have. She's a fierce mother, hence why she was portrayed as a jealous wife in myths, because she was protective of the divine feminine energy that she has and her union with the divine masculine that is Zeus.
See, everybody, isn't that beautiful? I love the way you are reframing a lot of this for us newbies to this field.
I remember I went to the Hera temple in Argos. I think it's Argos. I hope I'm not getting this wrong. I think it's Argos, yes. And I went there and I wasn't sure about Hera. I'm like, because I was aware of the myths. And then what I did with Sargis at every single temple, I had my dowsing rods. This is my new ager coming through. I had my dowsing rods and I would ask the gods, show me where to meditate. So they would get me to a spot. I would sit there. I would make my offerings and my libations, my pagan side. And then I would sit there and channel my new age side. So I would have my journal with me and I would just channel whatever the god said. And I expected to feel something negative from Hera. But all I got was this motherly kind of energy, I felt like a mother, like my fatherly instincts were coming through, and like I don't want to have kids. And I'm like, why do I want to have kids right now? Like, what's happening on within me? Because she had that motherly energy, and she reminded me that we we belong in human families, in so many different families, even if we're not parents. We're parents to our dogs, we're parents to ourselves, we're parents to our friends, we're parents to our communities. And family is something that exists on many different levels, not just our traditional family, our biological family, but the human family, our city's family, the groups we belong to, the online communities we belong to. That's the kind of Hera I met when I meditated there. And then when I was leaving, I saw like a piece of like marble, and it had two doves like kissing one another. And I'm like, interesting how this pure goddess was turned as this villain who's is a jealous wife and just takes revenge on people, when she represents this perfect pure unity between two sides.
Yeah.
But she has that essence of strong independence, powerful, which doesn't fit the traditional expectation for feminine.
Exactly.
And so for her to be so prevalent during these times when people are trying to have more of a connection and resurgence with that feminine divine, but I've talked to my sons about this extensively over the years, is that strong, independent women, you respect them and they're equal. You're not better, you're not worse, you're equal. And I think that that's my magic wand wish with what we're going into and everything that you're sharing, is that it is going to bring this balance. And I mean, I love that energy that you're describing.
The divine feminine and the divine masculine, there are many different qualities to it, but we tend to glorify certain qualities. Let's take Aphrodite, for example. Okay. When people talk about love, especially in the spiritual community, they think about agape, this oneness, this pure divine love that we feel when we meditate. Aphrodite is here to tell us that she embraces both that kind of spiritual love, and we can see the different qualities of the god by their epithets, how the word, like the adjectives, how they were described and named. And one of her epithets is Urania, heavenly Aphrodite, and that represents her spiritual love qualities. Then we have Philomedes Aphrodite, the sensual kind of Aphrodite. We have Aphrodite Pandimos, which basically means of the people. And that is the sexual side of Aphrodite. So we have different versions of Aphrodite, and therefore her divine feminine qualities, that take sexual love, sensual love, flirting, adorning ourselves, and spiritual love as equals. So sexual love is not beneath spiritual love, and spiritual love is not above sexual love. They're all needed equally. That's what I learned by connecting with Aphrodite. Powerful, right?
Very powerful.
Well, and it tags with the new age of blending mind, body, spirit. You're bringing in all the attributes, and a wholeness comes from this.
Hence her affirmation is, I embrace all expressions of love. That's how I defined her.
Okay, I have a question before we let you go. There's 12 gods and goddesses in the pantheon, and then we have 12 planets in the zodiac. We have 12 apostles who followed Christ. Is the number 12 significant for any reason? Why is that continually carried through? Do you know? Just an opinion.
I'm not entirely sure about that. But what I do know is that when we take like the history of religion, it has been evolving, and new religions were taking on older practices and adapting them. Let's say, for example, when you go to like all the big churches and cathedrals, they are built on like ancient temples. When you take Easter, for example, it's a pagan holiday. When you take Christmas, for example, it's the birth of Hercules, baby Hercules, who represents the light. It's the birth of the light. So they were all built on old traditions. Something that I have to share that could explain why there are 12 is because the reason there are 12 gods is because there are 4 stages, 4 steps, and I talk about that in the book, 4 steps of creation. So the Neoplatonist philosopher Salutius, who lived in the later and Hellenistic years, when Christianity was taken over, he decided to write all the information down in a book to save the information. And in the little book, there's so much context, and it's published, like people can find it out, but I talk about this specific thing in the book as well. He talks about cosmic and hypercosmic gods. Hypercosmic gods, they care about the mind and the soul, and we don't talk about them in the book. In the book, I talk about cosmic gods, the gods of the cosmos, the physical universe, who make up the physical universe and care about guiding us in our journey of ascension. And he talks about the 4 stages of creation around the gods, how the gods are separated into different powers and qualities and purposes. And those are creation, animation, harmonization, and maintenance. So we have 4 types of gods with these 4 types of qualities. And with each of these steps, there are 3 gods representing the beginning, the middle, and the end of that function. So when it comes to the creation gods, we have 3 gods. It's Zeus, it's Poseidon, and it's Hephaestus. Zeus represents the beginning of creation, bringing in the divine semen. Poseidon, who is the god of change and transformation, is the middle stage of that, the middle point, because he takes that energy and transforms it by creating something. And then Hephaestus, who is the god of handicraft, making things practically, he manifests, completes that step. And then we go into the animation gods. Again, 3 other gods, beginning, middle, and end. Harmonization gods, Apollo is one of them. And then we have the maintenance gods like Hestia, who maintains the status quo and the creation. And we can find these steps in everything we manifest. We call this manifestation now. We come up with a desire, creation. We put in some work into it, animation. We fine-tune the details to bring it into manifestation, harmonization. And then we maintain it and use it as a platform to start something new, maintenance. So 3 gods, 4 steps, 12. Wow. So I suppose that everything else was based on that, and even this could have been based on something else before it. Who knows? Because that's the history of religion.
Yeah, that blew my mind when I learned that all Christian religions came from pagan stuff. Because I remember saying to priest and nun teachers that I grew up with, what's up with the bunny rabbit? I don't understand that. And they never could answer me. And when I learned about, Astara and how her symbol is the bunny, I was like, oh my gosh. And then Saturnella for Christmas, it was just absolutely fascinating.
And did you know that the Parthenon went through many stages of desacralization and resacralization? It was an ancient Greek temple, then it became a mosque, then it became a Christian church, and changed so many different phases. And now it's back to being a temple again.
Wow. What was your best friend doing in the temples when you're dowsing and journaling and meditating? I'm just curious because he sounds so fun and let's go here and let's have a bottle of wine there. What was he doing?
My best friend, he's studying Chinese medicine right now. So he's a Chinese medicine practitioner and follows that kind of spirituality. But he always follows along what I do. He trusts me and I trust him as well. He comes over, he lives in Prague in Czech Republic, and then he comes and stays with me for a month every 3 months. So when he comes over, he's tells me all his Chinese stuff and does acupuncture on me and holds charcoal over my body and shifts my energy. So when we went to the temple, he would follow my own guidance. We would follow the dowsing rods. I would ask him Sarkis, you have to make an offering to the goddess over here. He would make the offering and meditate with me as well. And I have several quotes of him and his meditations in the book. When we went to Hephaestus, the temple in Agora in Athens, we came out of the meditation and I was filming him for some reason. I decided to film him. And I have this video and the quote in the book where he said, I felt like Hephaestus turns something from crude to, and then he used another word, from crude to creative, something like that. And I'm like, oh, that's mind-blowing. So I took that quote and I have that in the book. It's not that. I don't remember the exact
No,
words
but
right
it's
now.
close because I remember thinking that's so like because didn't his mom like kick him out because he was unattractive? And that's why he got into like all this creation because he wanted to make unattractive things beautiful. His story
Yes,
always like,
exactly. Yes.
yeah,
The myth was that I think it was Athena at the temple of the Parthenon in Acropolis. He was born ugly, and then he pushed him down the mountainside. That is the story of Hephaestus.
it's such a sad story. And then he ends up becoming this. I mean, he makes all the metals. He makes Zeus's. Well, I guess he doesn't make his lightning bolt, but doesn't he make all the tools for the
Yes,
gods?
he makes all the tools of the gods. And in the book, I have a meditation all about going to Hephaestus's workshop through Mount Etna in Sicily and like seeing all those tools. But let's bring Hephaestus to the present moment, because he was the god of craftsmanship, metalwork. Like, how would you work with Hephaestus right now? He's not very trendy like Aphrodite. Okay, sex and beauty. Well, he's the god of technology and AI, because that is our technology right now. Well,
That
now
makes
he's
sense.
relevant. Now he's relevant.
Exactly. I love him. I love his story. And so I just think what your friend got was so apropos of who he is.
I remember the quote. He turns things from crude to grand. That's what he said.
I love it.
When you mentioned your friend, Chinese medicine, do you have any desire to go and connect with not the equivalent of, because it would be the same energy that you're in, but would going to Chinese temples or going to different places around the world and seeing if the energy would feel the same, or making, because it's similar to me to comparative religions, is you're going to connect with that same energy no matter where you are on the planet. But
Yes,
I don't really know what my question is with
Temple
that.
I get
hopping in
it.
India, you mean, or temple hopping in China?
Yes, like a global kind of
I
to
love that
bring the
actually. And
interconnectedness.
yeah, and Chinese temples, especially, I would, because the first ever spiritual modality I practiced was Feng Shui. So I started from the Chinese culture and studying Feng Shui, and then went into everything else. So, and in general, I just love learning about sacred spirituality and learning about religions and learning about different spiritual traditions. And I welcome everything in and I try everything. And of course, I would love to go out and explore. And I've done that for so many years. But I do believe that we have energetic cords connecting us to the religion of our ancestors. And if it's like from different ancestral places to many different ancestral like places and the gods and the religions of that ancestry. And therefore, when we activate that cord, there's something powerful coming through. But also we have energetic cords to our ancestors from our past lives. And therefore, let's say, for example, I had many past lives in China, I would have strong connections with China. So when we activate those cords as well, we get a lot from it. I felt that when I connected to the Greek gods and goddesses, after trying so many different things, I felt this shift. It felt like coming back home. But I also felt strong connection with Chinese culture as well, and connecting with Feng Shui, for example. So yes, I would totally be up to doing something like that. And interestingly, Chinese medicine is very similar to ancient Greek medicine that's now lost. But in Greece, at the school where they teach Chinese medicine, they don't call it just Chinese medicine, they call it ancient Greek and Chinese medicine, because they bridge it, because there are so many similarities.
Oh.
And it's interesting how different cultures that couldn't communicate would reach the same conclusions, right?
I always find that fascinating. Always find that. Even before we had boats that could help us to journey that far, they had
Yeah.
all those similar belief systems and archetypes in common. I think that's absolutely amazing. Okay, so people can go to GreekMysticism.com and they have access to a free workshop there. Can you tell people how they can do that?
Yes. So when you order the book, you just enter your order number, your name, and email in that website, GreekMysticism.com, and you get access to a free workshop with me all about meeting your guardian god or goddess. So I'm going to be teaching this workshop, guiding you through a journey to meeting your guardian god and or goddess, because you may have more than just one, so they can guide you on your life and while you read the book.
I love it. Thank you so much for coming back on and sharing your beautiful journey and your work. The book again is called Secrets of Greek Mysticism, and we'll put links in the show notes and on our social media pages. Thanks so much, George. Can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you both so much for having me. I so appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And everybody, thank you. Remember, as always, to show up, do great work, and share your light.
Take care.